Good afternoon, this is Jeff with Sewer Tech Northwest. Today we're at property address 1980 Southwest Filmont Avenue here in Portland. We're located at the rear of the home, right by the hose bib here, straight out from it. We have a 4-inch PVC cleanout that's hiding underneath a valve cover box. We're going to insert the camera and check the overall condition and serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. We currently have water running. Here we go. It looks like it transitions here over to the original concrete pipe. It's hard to tell here. Some older pipe is a little bit different in diameter, even though it can still, I think that's still 4-inch concrete there. And we'll take a good look at all this stuff on the way out when the line's all drained. And it transitions back over to 3034 PVC pipe here. It looks like they left some original concrete. I think what happened is they probably updated parts and pieces of it as they poured whatever this new pad is back here. I think whatever was kind of easiest to get to. There may have been some root intrusion or something else like that going on. They just did parts of it. Ideally, you get the whole thing updated at once, because the hard part with concrete pipe is it will slowly but surely wear out over time. The mortar will wear out between the rocks, and it will slowly thin the pipe walls out. Alright, we're back to PVC pipe here again. And then back to concrete again. Alright, we got roots coming through here at 77 feet out. More roots here at about 80 feet. See those coming down there. And then once again back to PVC pipe. And that right there should be our main lateral connection. I'll go do some locates to verify where this is at. It is a Y connection, which is generally not how main connections are set up. So I'll make sure we know where this is at here. Make sure it's not over in someone's yard or something like that. Alright, we're going to shove out a little farther here. I located the camera head. If you're standing in the street looking at the driveway part of the house, the home directly to the right, the line is in their front yard. So it does appear that this is some sort of party line connection here. My guess would be with that neighbor there. And so right now we're just going out into the street. That Y connection is just a couple feet before the street edge. The camera's not wanting to move past this point here. I'm going to go locate. We should be pretty darn close to the main lateral connection at this point. Alright, the camera's hung up here, stops up at about 5-6 feet short of the main lateral. And it looks the city, someone has come out here and marked already in the street, so I'm not going to put any paint markings here. Alright, the line is all drained out at this point here. We're going to go ahead and start reeling back in. First and foremost, I highly recommend contacting the city to make sure that they're even going to allow this configuration to exist. Again, that Y connection's over in the neighbor's yard, and it does appear to be a party line with that neighbor, the blue house just to the rear of this home. Now that concrete out there, at this point, I would recommend updating the pipe. We'll take a look at it on the way back in here. Portions of it were updated, obviously, for a reason. We've got a big old hole right there in the pipe. I'm going to put my first paint marking right here, but you can see that we've got about a 2-inch gap between that and the PVC pipe there. Now, because of the rough condition all this concrete pipe is in here, I recommend a full update. You could do the whole thing, I suppose, or spot repair it. It's kind of a tricky situation here, it being spot repaired so many times. You've got a lot of different holes to dig. So as long as this thing drains out nicely throughout, we don't have a whole lot of standing water left over, all said and done, you might be able to do a pipe liner on it, but we'll see what we were dealing with when we reel back in here. Alright, I just made contact with the neighbor next door here. So it's and because we're not in Multnomah County is much more stringent on party line connections. According to him, it sounds like the city or the county is going to allow this to exist. My concern here, though, is we do have what looks like a hole in the sewer pipe here. And I'll try and shove a little closer to it. We don't get a super great view, but it looks like we have a hole that's developed there, and I can't really tell if there's a fern coat that's overlapping that spot. We do have a fairly good sized hole. So I have marked a white X there at that spot over in the neighbor's yard. And they're not terribly keen on me being over there, so I don't want to do a whole lot of painting on their property. I have put an X there for reference, but we have right here just in front of the camera another hole as well as root intrusions coming through the pipe. So I'm going to do all my other marking here, and we have roots there, so we have roots at 83 and 85 feet. It's unfortunate this thing was spot repaired this many times. It really should have just been fully updated at this point. Obviously that doesn't do us a lot of good now, but it just ends up being basically the same price to fully update as to do multiple spot repairs like this. Okay, I'm going to see if this was back on property here. This is where we have another transition. I do recommend a full update to all the concrete pipe we just scoped there, and more than likely I'm going to recommend updating to the rest of the concrete. When it gets to the point where the aggregate is showing through and you've got holes opening up in the side of the pipe, the pipe has reached the end of its life expectancy, essentially. Still functioning, but it's ready for update. Okay, right now we're just off to the right of the driveway. If you're standing in the street looking at the house, right between the two properties here. That's marked with I put a T marking there just to indicate the transition. And we're only at 3 feet deep, so it's quite shallow. But from that point to the end of that concrete section, I recommend updating. We've got roots and holes and aggregate rock showing through. Got more roots there at about 63 feet. And more roots there at 60 feet. So yeah, at this point I'm recommending a full update to it. And we're starting to come up the side of the driveway here. Still very shallow. It's only about 2 feet 6 inches deep. Now because of that, you could look into the cost difference of doing trenchless repairs versus where you dig the line up. And this is going right underneath a whole bunch of bushes, so we're probably going to see roots pretty much throughout this whole spot here. We're about 3 feet 5 inches deep here. We just crossed over to the backyard side of the fence. At this point here, because most of this is under the stamped concrete back here, I'm just going to do some very small white dots. Everywhere you see a T marking, you're probably going to have a transition point here. What I'm liking so far, I'm hoping we don't see much in the way of standing water. The amount of times this thing would need to be spot repaired and the amount of concrete you'd have to deal with, I would highly recommend looking into doing a trenchless repair, whether that be a pipe burst or a liner. I think doing a pipe liner in this circumstance is probably going to be your best bet. And that right there is some standing water. It's only about a 1/16 of an inch. It's very, very minimal. Even with the aggregate, all the roughness of it and the water there, we have no debris buildup. So in that circumstance there, doesn't concern me a whole lot that if you did a liner there, you'd retain a little bit of standing water, but nothing significant at all that's going to affect the flow. And we're going to reel back here, and I'm just going to put a marking where our transition point is, and it's right there at 7 feet. Now from this point here, I have moved the camera real ways from where we started, so that's why the footage is going to be a little different. But from here at about 8 feet, all the way out to the Y connection there in the neighbor's yard, I recommend updating. And then the concrete out in the street, at that point, it's a shared line, so I don't know how they would look at updating that. More I'm concerned about the stuff that's on property here. You'd have to contact the city about how you'd do that, because by the time you hit the street, you're shared with the neighbor. I don't know how they would look at that. From this point here all the way out to about 85 feet is where that Y connection's at. I recommend updating the line, or at least all the concrete in between. Alright, here we're at about 2 feet 6 inches deep, and we are underneath the stamped concrete here. Everything from this point back is updated. Okay, we're going to reel the camera out of the line here, just so it matches up with when we first ran the camera out. My reel was up close to the clean out. My report will show from 3 feet to 85 feet. I recommend updating. It may end up being more cost effective if you did the liner route to just line the entire section rather than to do spot repairs. I would talk to repair guys about how best to do that. But I would look into that. As you can see, the amount of concrete here that the line runs underneath. Basically everywhere there's not concrete and there's dirt, that's where the pipe was updated.